Welcome everyone to the Actors Fund Wednesday Forum, Identifying Creative Work Alternatives. Our goal with these forums is to feature guest speakers who are experts in their fields to share their knowledge on a range of work and financial management strategies. We also hope through these forums to provide connection and community to help you navigate the multitude of challenges brought on by COVID-19. And my name is Joanne Webb, and I am the director of the Career Center Western Region here at the Actors Fund. Before we completely get started, I just want to point out a couple of things that we have both a Q&A and a chat. The chat is a way for you to network and to gather resources regarding your career journey, and that's what that's for. Q&A is if you have any questions for the panelists that you want to put into the Q&A, we will field them the best way we can. We only have an hour and a half with this, so it's a little bit less right now as we're waiting for more people to get in. But let's get started. I want you to know that our team, and I would like to thank each of you who've logged on for taking time out of your day to join us for this important conversation. As many of you know, our mission at the Fund is to foster stability and resiliency over your lifespan. If there are people joining us today who are in need of financial assistance, please visit our website, www.actorsfund.org, to learn how you can apply for financial assistance via our online portal. Our entire staff is working diligently to review and respond to each of your requests as quickly as possible. It's been a very challenging aspect to try to make sure that we reach you in a timely manner. Also, please note that there is both, and I've always talked to you about I'm going to say again, the chat box and the button for the Q&A on your screen. I also want to let you know that if at all you need help in the area of any kind of career support around building a resume, assessments, doing LinkedIn, all of that, please join us in our Monday orientation so that you can take workshops free of charge via Zoom. So put that down in your calendar. Today, we are privileged to have two experts who will help us learn how we can best understand what kind of creative career alternatives are available and taking shape for the future with the impact from COVID-19. Our team in the Career Center is consistently exploring what kinds of jobs would be a good fit for our creative community. What we know is that the arts and culture industry have lost over $4.5 billion in work thus far, and it's still ticking. So those in the entertainment and performing arts communities have been hit hard by this crisis. During these times of uncertainty, it is difficult to feel optimistic about potential job opportunities. Therefore, learning from career professionals aligned with creative economy becomes essential for navigating a successful job search. I'm very proud to introduce our two panelists today who I couldn't be happier that they could join us for this conversation. I'm going to start out with Brad Hall. As a student at UCLA, Brad Hall was bit by the film bug while working on the lot at Warner Brothers. In the following years, Brad worked on the producing side for Disney, Paramount, Fox, and Nickelodeon in 1998. Brad Hall founded entertainmentcareers.net. It has since become the industry standard and top destination for jobs and career information for entertainment, broadcasting, and digital media industries, getting over 400,000 visitors and placing tens of thousands of jobs. Entertainmentcareers.net is the top site for people looking for jobs and internship in the entertainment industry and is published in Bloomberg Business Week, the New York Times, and other esteemed publications. Victoria McCabe, since 2018, Victoria McCabe has been a recruiter for the Creative Group, which is part of Robert Half Staffing, specializing in placing highly skilled interactive design, marketing, advertising, and public relations professionals with a variety of firms. The Creative Group's mission is connecting skilled creative talent for the best projects and full-time jobs. They maintain business relationships with a variety of organizations, including AIGA, American Advertising Federation, How Magazine, and Graphic Design USA Magazine, which underscores their commitment to serving the creative community. So with that, I'm going to move forward with our questions so that we don't keep anybody waiting in this process. And once again, if you have any questions that come up for you, don't forget to put them in the Q&A and not in the chat so that we can review them. We won't get to everybody, but we will do our best to field the questions in the last half hour here. So let me start out, and I'm going to aim this one at Brad. Through entertainmentcareers.net, you are someone who has your fingers on the pulse of job opportunities in the entertainment industry. Could you give us a summary of how COVID-19 has impacted this employment market and the entertainment performing arts community?
Yeah, thank you, Joanna. And by the way, if you ever need a job as a publicist, I would love to hire you. Thank you for that lovely introduction, making me seem much cooler than I am. Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, obviously it's impacting different segments of the industry and much harder. Everything obviously in physical production, it's stopped. Anything where you are performing in front of a live audience all those jobs are temporarily gone. The part that's harder to digest is the fact that maybe in scale, out of, we'll say 5,000 jobs that we had before pre-COVID, we've only lost realistically about 25% of those. And again, we're carving that outside of physical production, the things that were literally shut down. Because on one aspect, the industry has never been in a better position to absorb the ability to entertain people in the privacy of their own home, on their mobile devices in their living room. So in aggregate, it feels like nobody's hiring, all the jobs are gone. And in physical production, live events, and sports, it's certainly the case, temporarily. But for the vast majority of the jobs within the industry outside of that, it is the shrinkage is only about 20 to 25%. So, you know, even when we were preparing for this, you know, I reached out to someone at Warner Media because they're actively, you know, I think there's this notion that, oh my gosh, there's no jobs available. No one is hiring right now, because it feels that way. But the reality is that there are still in our larger employers, hundreds, if not thousands of jobs that they're still trying to fill. So the one thing I would say is, even though it feels like no one is hiring, it's simply not the case. And so the job seekers that are actually being proactive right now are getting rewarded by not having as much competition as they normally would. It's pretty counterintuitive, but you know, the reason I mentioned Warner Media is they actually have an active campaign of like, we're still hiring. And so they wanted to make sure that everyone understood that there were everything that they have, you know, they've culled through everything that they can move forward on. Obviously, in many cases, some employers simply can't move forward on any hires. But right now, if you go into any of the sites, any of the studio sites, they've already weeded out that which they cannot move forward with. And so the message is, hey, if you see this job, we're still actively recruiting for this. And in some cases, we've seen our employers, you know, pivot very quickly to remote hiring, remote onboarding. And, you know, some people that have literally never stepped foot in their office yet because they've been hired throughout this whole process.
Mhm. Great, great. And so, and we're seeing people are getting very creative too. You know, you can see like with Saturday Night Live at home, you know, that they're still producing Saturday Night Live under these conditions. It's quite extraordinary. And what people are doing, some of the comics in the evening, you know, like that, everybody's working obviously from their basements or their living rooms or their kitchens, you know, like we are. But they're getting production out there. So it is a different kind of a scenario than we ever thought it would be. Question for Victoria. What are some of the advantage for a potential candidate to go through an agency such as the Creative Group rather than on their own? And along with that, I just want to see, do you see temporary work expanding during this time? Oh, you need to be unmuted. Uh, Alexandra, please unmute. You're good.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm here. So you said, where have we seen creative work expanding during this time?
Yes, well, it's a twofold question. What are some of the advantage for a potential candidate to go through an agency such as the Creative Group rather than on their own? And then also, do you see temporary work in this area expanding through this crisis?
Definitely. So I would say the biggest aspect that Creative Group and Robert Half as a whole can offer you guys in terms of your job search is our existing network. Given the circumstances, as Brad was saying before, hiring has slowed for many companies, but most of the hiring that they're doing has been warm hires. So companies are very open to referrals because, as Brad was saying too, the work is still somehow getting done, but companies don't have the same resources that they did in terms of doing multiple interview processes, in terms of sending their HR out to find talent. So that's where companies such as Robert Half and the Creative Group can kind of step in and utilize our existing network to kind of get those connections with those hiring managers, get you in front of these roles that might not be available to the general public, just because resources are really tight right now. As far as creative temporary work expanding, we've seen it kind of expand in unique ways. It hasn't necessarily been expanding as much in creative industries, but we have seen creative work trickle into essential businesses and essential industries. So whether that be, I would say the education space has been pretty big for us right now. We've seen creative work trickle into the education space on the design side, on the marketing side, on the strategy side. On the creative space, what used to be our bread and butter roles aren't necessarily the case anymore. Where it used to be design and copywriting, we are getting a lot more traction with people who can transfer digital skills, people who can come up with creative strategy, people who can kind of help companies navigate this space, because I think that's what companies' biggest obstacle right now is: how are we going to continue the workflow in this new environment? And so they are bringing people in to kind of help navigate the new environment.
And I'm also seeing in that process that a lot of people are, like if you're an actor or
Hmm.
a performing artist or a dancer, and you have certain skills like writing or you know how to do some design or anything, there's
Hmm.
opportunities for that person, right? If they can have a resume that points those things out.
Definitely. If you have additional skill sets that fall either on the creative visual side, writing or marketing, those skills are definitely transferable. Um, I mean, production coordination and stuff like that was part of the roles that we staffed, but due to the offsite environment, it's not as common. But yeah, any skills that you have that relate to that industry that are transferable are definitely in demand right now.
Right, right. You guys even were working with editors because I remember going to visit
Hmm.
your organization,
Yeah,
and
um,
and which editing is something people can do at home, but they have to have something to edit. You know, that's
definitely. Both on the copy and the video side,
great.
editing has been, yeah, increasing.
Fabulous, fabulous. So to both of you, I'd like to hear your take. Though it's very clear that there is an abundance of, it's just clear that there's abundance of job loss in the entertainment performing arts communities. Um, I know you were talking before a little bit, Brad, and you both have talked a little bit about some. Can you give a little bit more detail about the kinds of jobs that people could be thinking about in that respect? Like we're talking about writers. I mean, writing will still go on, and we have the best storytellers in the world, you know, in the community that we serve. So, can you speak to that at all? And this is to both of you.
Sure. Yeah, it's almost it's a frustrating answer, which is the opportunities are everywhere for our community, especially one with a performing or visual arts background. Every small business owner that I'm in contact with personally and professionally, they're all struggling to figure out how to communicate with their customers. And any service-based business has to figure out how to deliver their services online. And I know that you guys have done some great workshops, you know, like, because I'm a people person, but like, you know, doing things like this is horribly awkward for me because I'm not used to being on camera. And, you know, a lot of our community is, and that's an enormous asset because, you know, I even know one of our Actors Fund community members, like she's launched a business helping entrepreneurs be able to deliver their message online and to be able to deliver their services online and sort of in that catch-all of content creation. Because I mean, we already saw a transition into that, you know, over the last 2 years, but every small business needs content creation. And I would say even now more than ever, because their ability to connect with their customers has been changed. You know, and as Victoria was saying, and, you know, it's something that we barely touch on, but that the education space is ripe of opportunity. You know, for you know, on the sort of more like the non, you know, in front of the camera people or with that technical background, we still see the same thing, which is, you know, in any sort of downturn in the economy or a twist of the economy, people are looking for multifaceted candidates. You know, if it's a service you're providing to your local business or an employer, employers want to extract a little bit more value. And I mean, the good thing with our Actors Fund community is we tend to have skill sets in a variety of areas, which makes us more valuable. You know, in a full market, people tend to go for something that is more of a compartmentalized expertise. And in a questionable market, they tend to gravitate towards people that can have more of a diverse skill set. And, you know, that's why I'm optimistic for our community that, you know, we have an opportunity to use our skill set and our mindset, which is creativity is not necessarily the skill or the product, but it's the way the brain works. And everybody literally in the world needs creative problem solvers right now. And that's what creative people do best.
Mm-hmm. And one of the definitions for creativity in Webster's dictionary is problem solving. And we have the best storytellers and the best problem solvers that I know about, you know, in our community. Anything from you, Victoria, in that area?
Yeah, so more specifically on the creative content development and creative problem solving, we have seen an increase in social. And social was always big before. We always worked social media roles, whether it's social producing, creating the actual content, or doing analytics. But we are seeing an increase in, and this would actually be specific to entertainment. Entertainment companies are having to get their contact out or their content out via social media rather than producing all new like TV shows and stuff because it's a much smaller production to kind of gather up social media videos and short form content. We're seeing an increase in that. So whether it's with creative agencies or the streaming services, they're launching new social media initiatives. So we are seeing increases in that just in the past couple of weeks, and we're expecting that to kind of be a trend that forecasts into the future.
You know, that adds to a bit in where I wanted to go next, because you know, you're already talking about what kind of skills, you know, we're looking for, but also we're always pushing for people to look at possibilities of education, furthering their education in some way, whether that doesn't have to necessarily be another degree. It could mean just taking some workshops or classes. What areas do you think, especially with technology and social media, by the way, what areas are out there, you know, in terms of training, and there's a lot of free training right now, that you think would be useful to this community to be able to be more employable for opportunities that are coming up? Let's start with you, Victoria.
Yeah, so I think anything that you can get your hands on in the digital marketing space would be great. I think social media content production is more of a creative skill in a sense that it is more about how the brain works and less about like a technical skill set. However, on the analytical side, there are all sorts of programs that kind of teach you about social media platforms, how to analyze data and stuff like that. On the digital marketing side, I would say there are free courses going on right now where you can kind of learn like HubSpot and Hootsuite and MailChimp, and that can add email marketing to your background, which is a huge piece of digital marketing right now. Going off of what Brad said, that's how many companies, both in the entertainment space and not, are. That's how they're communicating with their consumers through email marketing, through online digital messaging. So anything that you can get your hands on in that space, I would definitely say is a good route to go.
And I would also say take a look at your community colleges, because a lot of, I know out in California, there's a lot of free, like that, you can manage it that way. But there's a lot of things that are for free. I do know at UCLA, Beverly Macy, who Brad and I know, she does an amazing training around social media. If that's something that you need, we bring her in to talk to our people here. But explore that for sure. How about from your side, Brad? What do you think would be helpful for people?
It's a great opportunity, and I say that cautiously, right? Because none of us want to be in this situation, but we do have a little bit of a pause here to freshen up our skills. And I would say, definitely some hard skills would be software platforms, and I mean, pointing out the obvious, which is video conference producer was a role that really didn't exist in mass 30 days ago, and yet everybody's hiring. And so obviously, if you understand how to produce a webinar, I mean, the skills are very translatable. And again, it's sort of like what Victoria is saying is, creativity is not just, working in film, television, music, performing arts. Every industry in the planet is trying to figure out how to use creative skill set to connect with their customers, now more than ever. And so any hard skill that you can get with understanding every single software platform out there, or the more common ones, or, if you're, over 25, like my age group, there's things like Slack and Discord where, it's like they're using these in the workplace, or Microsoft Teams, or now, Google's getting into it, and Facebook's trying to get into the conference side. But, like you don't want to be caught on your heels here. And also I would say that I think a very common interview question is going to be in the wake of this is, so tell me, what did you do to occupy yourself during this time? And I think every employer is always attracted to the person with that intellectual curiosity built in, so learn something, as all these software platforms that have normally been an expense are opening up for free, seemingly through September. So we have a great window of opportunity here. But, like Victoria was saying, there's enormous opportunity in the social side for anyone with creativity. It's like even to the point where, like there's brands, I think Wendy's in particular is almost known for their very witty social banter with amongst their competitors. And so, I know our community somewhat rejects, or not say rejects, or a little apprehensive about sort of the term marketing, or because it's tied with sales, but it's really communication. It is creative communication that just happens to be in a different environment. It's really no different than selling a Netflix show. You're selling something else, but it really requires that same creativity. So anything that you can understand about social and how the small and enterprise companies are connecting with their consumers are going to help right now, because a lot of smaller businesses are struggling. Everyone knows a small business in their community. I think the thing that the Actors Fund community suffers from a little bit, which is lack of understanding that the skills that they do have are valuable to the average business anywhere. So definitely, figure out what the tools are that your future employers are using. I mean, there's websites you can go on and find, like, what technology stack does, Netflix use? And it will tell you, oh, they use G Suite, and they use Slack, and they use this and this and this. So, it's a great time to brush up on skills. All these tutorials are for free. But, you know, from a larger skill set, you know, definitely understanding anything that allows you to do more contemporary tools to communicate in a way that allows a business to connect with their customers is going to make you inherently valuable everywhere.
Yeah. And I would just also say that, you know, that willingness to really explore other things, you know, and take that, you know, because you never know. I'm somebody that went from acting to TV production, and it was partially because an opportunity came up, and then that changed my focus in different directions. And I still wanted to work in the creative environments. And I know that that is the same for many. And would that be also considering people that would be maybe virtual assistants as well, you know, in creative places? Do you think there, you know, because one of my next question was really to talk about the working remotely. I really think what has happened with this particular period of time is it's opened that working remotely. It's been there, you know, it's been there before, but I think it's opened that door really wide, that it is very plausible for people to work remotely. And I know one of the things a lot of our clients are always looking for in our community is flexibility, you know, to be able to, if they have to go for some other kind of work, that they have that opportunity. What do you think the working remotely looks like where we are right now, but in terms of moving forward?
Well, I can speak to this from the creative group and Robert Half's side. So I would say 99% of the candidates that we had out with our clients are now working remotely. Some things that my company has done to kind of ease that burden is we actually had laptops and stuff that we were able to send out to particular candidates that weren't able to access the technical devices that they needed in order to work remotely. Many of our clients were able to provide that for our candidates. I would say, as far as best practices and working remote, we've haven't necessarily done workshops, but we've built up pamphlets, and there's things that you can find on the Robert Half website that kind of explain like the new job landscape, how to work remotely, how it works best for you and the client. As far as moving forward, I would actually hope that this does show a lot of companies how efficient working remotely can be, and allow for that flexibility to be in the future. To be honest, most of our roles up until this point were on site, and most clients were not open to the option of working remote, just because to get things up to speed, they wanted the person to be in the office and with the team. But I mean, with the new technology shifts, whether it's utilizing Zoom and Microsoft Teams is big now, just companies are realizing that they are able to operate under a remote working structure. So we're hoping that that does kind of change things in the future and allow more flexibility for the people that we work with.
Great. How about in your experience?
Yeah, I share Victoria's hope and optimism for the future, which is, I think, you know, even for smaller companies that have done partial remote, I think it's the mindset is changing rapidly, which is that, you know, it was the common misconception when someone wasn't as productive and you can't keep their eye. I mean, all those things are now being tested, and, you know, believe it or not, everyone seems to be surviving working from home. And I think in the near term, I don't think we're going to, it's, you know, even when the economy opens back up, it's not like it's going to be a light switch and everyone's like, oh, great, let's pile back into these bullpen offices, you know, especially like, you know, I think on the agency side where they're sort of used to that environment of, you know, executives on the perimeter and the bullpen on the inside of everyone's, you know, sitting face to face in a desk. I mean, that physically is going to have to change. And I even have, you know, executives sort of confessing, they're like, I don't know if I want my assistant in my office anymore. You know, like we're all sort of hedging a little bit. And so I think that we're going to be in a situation for the near term, at least until school starts, that where even if for some reason, you know, we're able to throw a switch tomorrow, people, because they have kids that are not in school with all the summer camps closed, employers are going to be required to be more flexible. And I think that's going to make the transition more indelible. And so, especially for our Actors Fund community, which tends to have, maybe 1 and 2 jobs, I think it's going to invite greater opportunity in the future where do you have to be sitting in front of a desk? I mean, no one's productive. I mean, like I'm not productive sitting in front of my desk all the time, Yeah. And so I think there's going to allow that greater flexibility on the employer side because we've all now experienced this. And, depending on the role, I think some people want to have that face-to-face interaction. But I do feel that, where, like I was saying with Victoria, it was like where she's saying, we were always in place. I mean, it's one of the greatest demands that job seekers have had forever, which is, can I do this remotely? And employers just like, no way. And now we're seeing this, there is no choice. And so I think that it's going to bring opportunity, especially to people in the creative realm that maybe have sort of like an atypical work week where they're able to, because all employers, the metric now is, are you getting your work done, versus sitting in front of a computer. They don't know. I mean, and also everyone's challenged there. People with families are trying to, teach their kids, feed them, shoo them away from conference calls. And so, at least on anecdotally and what we've seen, there's been no resistance. Obviously we have some segments of the industry when we have sort of proprietary IP, especially in VFX and post-production, where it makes it really challenging to work off-site. But again, it's like, creative people solve problems, and everyone is finding a solution for all of this. So I would say the net is going to be, excuse me, very excited. The net is going to be that there will be more remote opportunities in the future, or remote flex, which is probably the more realistic thing.
Mm-hmm. And that would be sometimes maybe you would go into the office and you would switch back with other people. It creates an interesting thing too with organizations that say, why do I need this big of square footage of space? Because I could have people working, from their homes, that where it provides it for our people and the way that they work is it also gives our community the opportunity to not have to worry about the commute, piece, which can take a lot of time, getting, especially in Los Angeles is one, but anywhere, like that in terms of that commute piece, and leaves them open to other options and other possibilities. Great. Anything more on this that either of you want to pitch in? Okay.
The one thing I would say is just, if this is a pursuit of someone, just make sure that their digital infrastructure is good, because I think we all struggled a little bit with, where was our Wi-Fi, and, the frustration level as an employer when you're unable to connect, I think people are getting used to this video chat. And for me, I love it. I'm like, we're across town and I can see your face right now. It's fantastic. Mm-hmm. And so, I've experienced as a business owner, when that communication piece breaks down, it's frustrating. So I would just say, make sure that, if pursuing a remote job sort of perpetually is a goal, then make sure your infrastructure is solid, where you have equipment that works, you have an internet that's upstream, because like everyone's selling you internet that's downstream because we're mostly consuming, but we're all now video producers in our living room or our home office. And so we need to make sure that upstream infrastructure is good also.
Right.
So
I have to say, even in my, having to work from the home, I mean, I never knew what a Wi-Fi extender was. I now, I've had to, really work on what part of the my space is the best space for working this way, and also making sure that you have comfortable chair and space to work from, and separating it from your regular home life. So there's all that goes with it. But this gets into a whole other thing, because then people are interviewing for jobs. And I would also think what this is going to do, especially right now, while COVID is still really very prevalent in our culture, that we are going to be in a different position than we've ever been in terms of the interviewing process. I have done interviewing before via Zoom. That's not a new thing. People have been doing it, but I think people are going to doing it more. And I just want to, I didn't have this in the list of questions, but this is coming out of what you just said. How is this going to impact making sure that people are presenting themselves well on this particular way of presenting via Zoom? Uh, could you speak to that?
Yeah, so I have actually been doing video interviews with candidates pretty much my entire career at the Creative Group. On the recruiting side, we do mostly video interviews, whereas if you were interviewing with one of our clients, it might be on site. Um, we pretty much say same rules apply. One of the biggest things would probably be to test the equipment out beforehand. So whether you're FaceTime is pretty reliable, but whether you're doing Zoom or Skype for Business or Microsoft Teams, definitely test the software out beforehand to make sure that you can figure out how to get the microphone working, video working, and stuff like that. But in terms of a professional interview and how to conduct yourself, same rules apply. Dress for success. Try to maybe choose a quieter place in your home, something that maybe doesn't have a distracting background. Um, and but the conversation really doesn't need to change. I mean, as with all interviews, keep them conversational. Make sure that you stay on track with the job that you're applying for. Try and find connecting points with whoever you're interviewing with so that it gives something a little extra to talk about and make things more personable. But I would say for the main part, I mean, same rules apply. Just make sure that digitally you're able to complete the interview because the Wi-Fi is working and everything like that.
Right. And I would say also the way you're dressed, the way that,
Mhm.
you know, the kind of background you have, that you're, if you do have kids, that you're in a space where they may not jump in to participate in that experience, that kind of thing as well. How about your point on that, Brad?
No, I think Victoria nailed it. I do see again sort of an opportunity for the Actors Fund community that is more comfortable on camera because, again, I'm a people person, but I'm horrible at this because I'm looking at Victoria, I'm looking at you instead of like I remember when Tom has his presentation. You need people like me who are not used to this. Look into the camera to be able to connect with them,
Mhm.
and practice. I think we can be of service to our broader community by making people feel more comfortable with this. And
Mhm.
like what Victoria is saying is make sure you practice this even today. Like I make sure I'm like I have all my lighting 15 minutes ahead of time and all this. And like I had a long meeting with the Producers Guild earlier in the week and my light kept going out and I was like, oh, we've got I got to hire a gaffer here, haha. But it's that one was obviously a little bit more informal, but it's like make sure that like everything there's redundancy. Things will happen inevitably, and then it's you can't control what will happen. You can control how you respond to it, which again shows how you used to manage stressful situations. But ultimately, like what Victoria was saying is everything. It's the same thing. You just have to spend a little time to get more comfortable with the equipment.
Thank you. Thank you. And Victoria, this is to you, in terms of transferable skills. We have clients sometimes who have, they could do that job, they have that ability to do that. A
Mhm.
good example is Census, which is also going through a lot of challenges right now on the way that they're presenting that. But they always had said they loved bringing actors and our people into their jobs because they could talk to people so comfortably and easily. Could you speak to some of the transferable skills that you think would be very useful in the marketplace? So in other words, if they don't directly do that type of job in their resume, but they
Mhm.
have those transferable skills available?
Yeah, so it definitely does depend on the type of role. Anything that's pretty heavy in the communication space or possibly even like sales space. I mean, I know you mentioned virtual assistant. Um, that at the end of the day is organization and people skills. So that would be a very great situation where an actor or actress might be great to put in those types of positions because they do have those people skills, those communication skills. I would say we do get this question a lot with Creative Group. To be completely transparent, most of our clients are very specific in the skill sets that they're looking for. We have seen situations, and we run into them quite frequently, where they do want people from certain industries. For example, if they want a writer, they want someone who has written for CPG, which is consumer packaged goods, or online jewelry companies, and they are very specific. But that doesn't necessarily speak to all of Robert Half and all the different jobs that we have. I would say that's very creative specific. And dealing with our clients. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 situation hasn't exactly helped. Now that there's actually more talent available, there's less jobs, but there is more talent available. So it's kind of like a catch-22 in that sense. But it, short answer, yes, in the broader scheme of the jobs that we work on as a company at Robert Half. Creative, it is a little bit more specific.
Thank you. So I also wanted to speak to something that we work with our community on all the time. How is one's LinkedIn profile an asset for being more employable in this industry? We know that it's a great networking place as well, the way that it works. But can you speak to that? Because I think a lot of people sometimes in the industry don't see it as something that really, it's more like for business, and it's not so much for people that are from the arts or from entertainment, acting, theater, any of that. Why don't we start with you, Brad, on that? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a tool. I mean, because everyone's sort of waiting for the LinkedIn for the entertainment industry, and it's LinkedIn. I mean, I think people were really resistant at first because it was, very enterprisey, and there were a lot of people, purporting to come out with the entertainment version of LinkedIn. But from what we see, both on the employer side and employee side, it's almost the de facto of, if you have an absence on LinkedIn, it almost seems suspect.
Mhm.
So, for us, like from a, we'll call that, being a candidate, like I think it's required. Like everyone we work with directly must have a LinkedIn account, because
Right.
it's almost like the silence is deafening a little bit in this market. It does get challenging because a lot, especially people in the Actors Fund community, where we almost have two lives. And so it becomes, you're like, what I know on my resume, I don't want to highlight this, but, also, it gets challenging because you're essentially trying to represent two sides of yourself. And ultimately, what we encourage people to do is choose the more professional side.
Mhm.
What makes you more attractive to an employer is the same thing you would put on the resume. And so we say they put the same thing on LinkedIn. And from a networking tool, it's phenomenal. Like a lot of people that we work with directly, it's even random strangers help random strangers on LinkedIn every single day, where you're starting a new industry. You're like, oh my gosh, I have an experience in this industry, but I'm doing this, and then we find a dozen people, we reach out to them, or they reach out to them. And inevitably one person will spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes on the phone with them to sort of explain their role. And so you have an ability to connect with people who have an expertise. Obviously, not everybody's going to respond to you, but as a networking tool, it is absolutely valuable. And obviously, just like in life, you want to be able to choose people and pursue people that are going to probably be more sympathetic to your plight. So someone, like we're like hometown, school, or find that common thread. A lot of people leak information, and I'm no different. Like I have all my volunteering, all my nonprofit work on there. And so I would say the smart people approach like, I know that where this person's soft spots are, that you can get a lot of intel on people that you may be meeting with or maybe wanting to work for, that you might find a little bit more personal way to connect with them. So I find it's an immensely valuable tool. I would say the caution in our community is that we tend to have, maybe two different lives that we're trying to represent. And, at some point you're going to have to make a decision. And we encourage people to choose to represent the more professional side versus the more creative side, because, you know, a casting director is not going to go on LinkedIn to find people, but someone who is going to look for, you know, someone to hire will use LinkedIn. And so you can use the tool for what it's meant to. You don't have to tell them everything.
Yeah, and I will say that we do a really good and excellent LinkedIn workshops that are focused on how you marry your story, you know, in the best possible way. And I just want to give thumbs up for that for anybody that is interested in participating in that kind of training. How about from you, Victoria? What about LinkedIn? We were communicating on LinkedIn today.
Yeah, so I love LinkedIn. I think when it first rolled out, it was a little bit weird. It was kind of a hybrid between something that was supposed to be very professional, but then also a little bit like Facebook. So it was kind of surprising to me and took some navigating. But I think going off of what Brad said, it's really become a great place simply for networking. There are recruiters on there, and then there are hiring managers on there. I would say from a recruiting standpoint, we use it quite frequently in order to source talent. However, from a hiring standpoint, they don't use it as much. In order to use the platform to its full extent and actually find the people that you're looking for, you usually have to have a premium version of it, which not everyone wants to kind of move forward with. But simply for networking, I mean, even before I was in the position that I'm in now, when I was doing the job search, I was able to find common connections where it was maybe someone that went to my school, someone who was from my same hometown, someone that I had similar interests in. And I was able to just have conversations with people that I would normally never have access to. And because there are things on the profile that not only speak to your professional experience, but speak to your personality. I mean, there's a picture. There are skills and interests. You can put, if you're acting or modeling, whatever it is, there is a section on LinkedIn where you can put that. And so people are able to see kind of a sense of your personality, and they're more than often open to a conversation, especially if you phrase it as if like you're just looking for connections or you're just looking to learn for something and you're not necessarily like asking them for a job. It's a great networking tool, 100%.
It's a great way also to be able to reconnect with people that you haven't connected with for a while. And I also believe that a lot of employers, and I know this from people at other employers I've spoken to, that they look, you know, when they get your resume, they look on LinkedIn and if you're not on it, sometimes that could be a concern, you know, in that respect. Not always, but it just depends on what kind of work they're looking at, what the position actually is. So, before we start to look at the next step as far as questions, I want to field some questions that have been asked in our Q&A. And you got, both of you are welcome if you want to go in the Q&A. If there's anything that you want to answer to, please feel free to do that. What kind of advice would you give potential applicants in how they can increase their ability to become a candidate for specific positions? Because I think this is a really great time. I think we've been talking bits and pieces of some of that, but if you were going to advise somebody, hey, you know, like some people will say, what difference does it make for me to apply for a job? They're not going to respond to me. What difference does it make for me to do an interview when I don't even know if that job is really going to be there? Is it still worth doing? With you, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, again, sort of just to flip back, we have employers literally reaching out to us saying, hey, what's going on? No one's applying to our jobs. I mean, effectively, they are, it's just the application rate is down. And so employers are still actively pursuing candidates. And I could love to get Victoria's feedback on this, but you know, what we see is, you know, we have our, you know, how to do it, like I think you guys did one also, which is how to do a job search during a pandemic, which is, you know, like our history is no one knows how to do this, right? We're going based off post September 11th. post 2000s economic meltdown and our various production stoppages we've had in the last 15 years. And so at least on our side, what we see is in an environment like this, we encourage people to go with their most marketable skill set versus that reach job, because we do have, less, especially on the sort of the bottom of the pyramid, sort of the administrative roles, we've had a lot of shed of headcount. And so what happens is, your talent pool goes up. And so employers don't necessarily have to make that reach. And so like we're telling people to, I think which Victoria was, I'm not hoping, taking your statement there, but like in a specific, maybe higher resource environment, they go with the expert. They go with the person that's done it. They go with the person that can do it. They don't have to take a risk. And so like in times where it's tighter job market, you can say, okay, I know it's a tighter job market. I can do that. And this would be a great job for me. But in this market, we're encouraging people to go at least, for the next 3 to 6 months, their most marketable skill set to get that employment. In a low resource environment, which we're talking about like working for a smaller business, that's when the multifaceted comes to play more, I would say, than the enterprise side or the larger employers. I'd love to get, not that I'm asking the questions, but I'd love to get Victoria's thoughts on that one also. I was curious.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. We work with clients of all different sizes, and definitely for the larger, more enterprise corporate clients, they are the ones that, in addition to using agencies, they're doing the search on their own. So they really are. They're looking for the people that directly align with the job in terms of skill set and industry. Smaller businesses, though, they are dealing with things differently. Maybe they have smaller budgets and they need someone who's more multifaceted, who can take on different types of roles, maybe more of hybrid type roles. So we are seeing an increase in those types of jobs with smaller businesses. And back to the original question. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there.
It's just what kind of events and advice you would give to potential applicants as how they can increase their ability to become a candidate,
Yeah, I would definitely say tailor everything and be specific as possible. If you do kind of do some self-reflecting and find that, I'm going to use social as an example because that's what's going on. Social media is a big piece of what you're doing in terms of skill set. Make sure that your resume and LinkedIn profile reflects that. It's not enough to just mention it a couple of times. Make sure that any experience that you have that you can relate to social, that you do so. That way it's coming up when employers are skimming your resumes. That way they're understanding kind of where that background comes from. Additionally, I would say be proactive. The talent pool is larger and the jobs are not as frequent. So you do need to do your due diligence in terms of connecting with people, networking, utilizing agencies for that type of stuff. You're more than welcome to. And if you are lacking in a certain skill set, utilize those free programs to kind of get yourself up to speed on those certain skill sets so that when you go for that job that you are the most qualified, because that's really what you want to be doing right now in this market.
For sure. And this an additional thing, I just noticed this in one of the Q&As, and I just want to mention this. What about age? I know we have a lot of people who are 50 plus in age, and that becomes a real concern in the general population. They're all amazing workers. They've had incredible careers. And do you really feel that there's more opportunity for them for specific jobs? I know there isn't supposed to be ageism, but we know that it's there.
Mm-hmm.
We especially know it's there in the entertainment community. We've experienced that often. But can either of you speak to that about people's qualification? I often say don't go back. We say don't go back further than 10 or 15 years, but somebody may have certain experience that they did before. I suggest putting it in the cover letter. that just along with what you see on my resume, I've also done this, this, and this, so that they don't have to have the years there. But any feelings about that? What you're seeing happening?
I've got I would say a presumption. I think we're going to be put into two different camps, those that can go into the office and those that can't. And I think it's a reshuffling of the deck. So I think with, and not to parallel, whether someone's 50 that doesn't have, kids in high school or elementary school, but I think it's going to be a challenge for anyone with a young family that may or may not be able to resume their job because, obviously you can't do retail, from remote workplace, and certain functionalities, hospitality, anything where you're, physically need to be there. It's going to reshuffle the deck. And so if we're going to make sort of the gross assumption that someone over 50 doesn't have, a kid in elementary school that they need daycare for and to watch, that may give opportunities for our older job seekers that otherwise have, waned throughout time. But again, that's just simply supposition based on sort of what we're hearing, what we're seeing, and what, sort of makes sense in that environment.
How about you, Victoria? What do you think?
Yes, agreeing with everything that's being said. Ageism is not supposed to exist. At the creative group, we actually do kind of assist with resume building and profile building to kind of avoid those types of situations. And we're very clear with our clients too about what's okay and what's not okay when we run into issues like that. I would say what's more common rather than specific issues with age themselves is just not having work that is as relevant to the work that's being done now. So for example, digital, while at one point websites was the new thing, and so building websites and designing websites, and while that's still a skill set that's needed, many companies are moving into, for example, like interactive websites or streaming websites. And if you don't have that experience, it's going to be harder to get those types of jobs. Doesn't mean that you can't get that experience and then go for those types of jobs. It's just that other candidates were born into a different digital time frame, so they started at a certain point in the digital landscape that other people are just now moving into. So that does get a little bit complicated, and that kind of goes back to this the specific aspects of the job. Like I saw someone in the chat mentioned OTT platforms. When our clients are looking for someone with OTT, they are like that's really what they're looking for. But I would say, I mean, aside from that, it should never be something that stops you from applying for a certain job. If you're qualified and you have the skill set, you're qualified and you have the skill set. So it really shouldn't be something that stops you, and we're able to assist people from all backgrounds, all ages, and everything, and pitch you guys to our clients, and we have no issue with doing that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. So why don't we kind of field some of the questions, that people have been asking. Somebody asked I think we covered this, but I think they just want more detail on it. What kind of positions are you talking about that the studios are hiring for? Are these more administrative type positions? I think you covered some of that, Brad, earlier, but do you want to just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially everything, right? Obviously, theatrical distribution's on a little bit of a hold of the breath here, but everything that is, like, if you, again, we'll use the example Warner Media, if you go anything on the studio side there, like everything that they have on there, they're reiterating, they are actively seeking. It's not like, they haven't culled the jobs. They are acknowledging what they can move forward with and what they can't, and it's across the board. I mean, because again, it's like as me coming from a physical production background, and a lot of the Actors Fund community is very tied into physical production. There is a vast side of the business that is still going on business as usual. That's that's the content side. The pipeline side is robust and it's moving on, greater than normal is everyone is subscribing to, Netflix and Disney Plus and Hulu and all the various, digital platforms. And by the way, I saw in one of the questions, what OTT is over the top, which is, like a Netflix or a Hulu or someone who pushes their end product through the internet is sort of the catch-all. I saw that one in there, but so.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. And so there's, somebody did ask, what thoughts do you have on the future of young adults looking to major and train professionally in the performing arts? Is there any fear of casting directors becoming obsolete and the rise in self-tape auditions for actors? Is that anything? I don't think that, Victoria, that wouldn't be an area of your expertise. Do you have any thoughts about that at all, Brad?
I just, again, it's all super fluid. What I'm hearing though is, auditions are back. Obviously they're not doing in person, but you still need a casting director. I mean, it's one of the best skill sets out there that's required. It's because we're, doing it in a different environment doesn't mean that something like a casting director doesn't exist. Like in the production workflow, we see a net gain of jobs versus a net loss of jobs, simply because there's going to be people, sort of being health and safety monitors. And I don't know if you guys have been following like any of the work groups that are trying to figure out the prescribed protocols for physical production, but it's going to require a little bit more human power than normal. And so I think, in the near term, this is, it is definitely, we see like voiceover is obviously it's ripe for, self-tape because that's what they do normally. But, I still think that, casting directors will still be required. It's not like anyone's going to, kick out that one of the most critical process of hiring an actor. But again, it's all fluid. And so all, most of my day is spent talking to people. What have you heard? What have you guys planned on? What's different this week than last week? Because it's every 7 days it changes, and we're seeing projections of when, production will start. And that seems to change, every 15 days. So it's super fluid. What I have heard anecdotally is that people are going on auditions, obviously self-tape, or I think, which is, I would imagine, preferred over doing something over Zoom. But, it's like the industry will always figure out a way to do this. But we have seen, again, just on stories of just people starting to, agents and managers are perking their heads back up and casting directors are reaching out to start casting.
Great, great. And I do feel that this community is also very resilient, far more resilient than I think people realize they are. And that creative aspect that you're talking about, where it's problem solving, will come into play. This is a good question. They're all good questions, but this is when there are all types of writing. What type is in the most demand when you see writing? Because it could be writing for a lot of different types of thing, and this could go to both of you. You want to start with that, Victoria?
Yeah, so the writing that the creative group deals with, we kind of just coin it as all around copywriting. That can vary through a variety of different mediums. Sometimes that means updating web copy. Sometimes it is digital storytelling in the forms of articles or blogs. Sometimes it means email marketing. Prior to the COVID situation, it meant a lot of taglines and slogans, and that was something that maybe you would have needed to be a copywriter in agency for a bunch of years in order to be qualified for that role. But we're seeing it open up more into just general communication. So if you have a background in writing blogs or maybe writing social media copy, whether it was for yourself or for a brand that maybe you worked with, we're seeing that those types of writing skills are increasing.
Mm-hmm. Great. How about from you, Brad? Because I know you've got a lot of writers on your.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I think I know what they're asking, but I mean, to answer realistically, it's like, I agree with what Victoria is saying, is in scale, the jobs are in social media. Like,
Yeah.
and again, it's like, I know we're like, oh my gosh, I'm looking for something that's, more creative or more narrative or longer format. It's not mutually exclusive. Like there, again, it's like, I think benefits would, small businesses and brands would benefit from the creativity that the Actors Fund community offers. And it is a little bit of a pivot, and it's not, writing a series for Netflix, but, for the next 6 months, like we need to all sort of be flexible and keep our minds open for ways that we can leverage our skill set, but like in gross numbers, because there's no reason why, someone in LA or New York can't also, can't be working on a brand or a small business that's in Des Moines, Iowa. I mean, it's social, every person I know that works on social campaigns works remotely. And so it's sort of, it solves a couple of problems. And I think like I said, I know it's not the answer of, long format writing, which a lot of our people are more interested in, but it's a great way to pay the bills and sharpen your sword at the same time. And it's not, it's not selling out, it's putting food on the table and developing another skill set that's marketable. I think we're going to have to be really flexible, given the uncertainty of, starting production back, will we or will we not have to go to a shelter in place in the fall, which I think is going to put a lot of hesitation on companies around the world, because we just simply don't know. And so, companies have to be flexible. So if we're looking for jobs, we have to be flexible. But, ultimately the Actors Fund community has a broad skill set that every single small business requires in order to communicate with their customers these days. There's one thing, if it's okay, I saw some of the Q&As in here, and they were talking about, let me scroll up here, LinkedIn. And, it's like, I have a very realistic view of this, which is, someone I think made a comment about, I've got, a LinkedIn profile for this side of my life and a LinkedIn profile for this side of my life. Unless the names are radically different, like you literally have a stage name, we don't encourage that, only because, and I will preface this by saying, don't shoot the messenger. And I know everybody understands this, and it is patently unfair, but there is a stigma against hiring actors. We run up against it all the time. And you've even seen job postings where they'll say actors need not apply. So, again, we're not arguing whether it's fair or unfair, because I find it unfair because I've hired actors to work in my company before. But ultimately, if we know that that's a bias against us, we can be angry and we can be frustrated by it, but we also need to learn from it and make sure that we're representing a profile, because if you're using, Joanne Webb and Joanne Webb the third, and you don't know which one that on a Google search they're going to find. You can absolutely put it in your resume, but you're assuming that they're going to click on that and not search for it anyway. So we just err on the side of caution, only because, one of the, advantages that we have is that, we sit in the middle. And so, we get very, very honest feedback from job seekers and very, very honest feedback from employers. And we know there's a bias against actors, writers, and musicians. And so, it's tough because we know we're all very proud about that aspect of our lives, but if we want maximum employability, we need to sort of play by the rules and hide it. And again, it's unfair. We can be angry about it, but we also want to be smart about it and not have it hurt us.
So what I'm really hearing you talk about is just being strategic and in the way that you tell your story, and also be very clear about it. Because I think one of the things that do come up is that if you Google somebody, so many different, their pictures will come up in so many different places, it's just a different kind of a world that we live in. But I appreciate that. Do you have any feelings about that, Victoria?
As far as having like different profiles and whatnot, like LinkedIn that says one thing and different profiles that say another, and kind of fitting too much in there. I would say, creative group is very different as well. Like I said, everything's pretty specialized. So I would pretty much agree with Brad and everything that he said. I would say because our clients are looking for such specialized work, the stigma might be a little bit more increased. So while it's something that's totally great and fine to have under like a hobbies or skills or interest question, if you're gonna kind of really shoot for those more like corporate style jobs, you definitely want to make sure that the experience is corporate, and then the interest can be whatever it is that you're passionate about. And those are great talking points too. Like always bring up whatever it is that you're passionate about. You can bring it up in interviews. You can put it on your resume. You just want to make sure that it has its own like section if the job that you're going for is more in that corporate space.
Mhm. And somebody also had, you mentioned lots of tutorials available now on learning software and platforms for free right now. Do you guys know, I know that in Dara has been, Dara Blaine, one of our career counselors, has been put together how to uh, job search during a pandemic. And I know she has a whole lot of resources in there around that. But do either of you have any sense of resources for getting training that would be useful to the community?
So I've heard of different training resources through the grapevine, not many of which I've actually looked into myself. I know, I believe I want to say Stanford released like a bunch of online courses, some related to coding, some related to digital marketing that are actually accessible and free for most people. I know certain software companies, just a personal connection of mine told me, I think that HubSpot was doing free training on digital marketing techniques. On the Robert Half website, there isn't as much for creative, but if you are kind of going towards more administrative roles, we do have training and testing that can be done for like PowerPoint or Excel or something like that. That could open the door for potentially like data entry roles, administrative roles that are maybe a little bit more on the analytical side, if that's something that you're interested in. Um, but it's really, I mean, pretty much any company right now is doing something, whether it's free, whether it's discounted, just to kind of help the situation out because they know that people have more time on their hands. So I saw in the chat box, people kept mentioning it was something
Linda?
linda.com. Yeah, and I'm not familiar with that at all, but people kept mentioning that. So it sounds like that could be a good resource for people.
Yeah, just so you know, lynda.com, which is lynda.com, is now LinkedIn Learning, you know, like that, which
Oh.
you have to pay for on LinkedIn. But if you have a public library card, you can go on to the library website and you can take any of the lynda.com training, and she has an amazing amount of training on there. And it's professional training for free. So if you need to learn certain programming, or you need to learn certain even things like Excel or anything, PowerPoint, and it's all professional training, and I highly recommend it. And they also teach other things too, but just take a look at it because it might be something that might be helpful for some of you. Okay. Can you give an example of how our creative skills are valuable for directors, actors, writers? You guys have mentioned some things, but can you be more specific? So if people have that background, I always say people that are ADs, you know, are amazingly good about project managing, you know, or production coordinators can be working in that project coordinator role very easily because it's really the same kind of stuff. But any thoughts about that from either of you?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. It's, you know, for us right now, we're encouraging people very similar, like what you said, is like, you have to look at the trunk of the tree of the skill set, you know, which is obviously managing on-set operations, you know, it'll be back in the next, 60, 90 days, but it's not right now. And there was a person that was a technical director, live events technical director, and It's like we're encouraging them to look at the trunk of the tree of the skill set, which is, you organize very chaotic environments in real time. And so like, I could think your example of being an AD is a great example, or anyone in a producing capacity. It's project management. It's project management in a very specific area. But I think, to probably lean more towards what the community is talking about, I would say it's, again, I hate to harp on this again, but, live streams, everyone's live streaming, producing live video, webinars, or, personality driven, content driven live streaming. It's absolutely everywhere. It's in every market, in every city, everywhere in the world. And so, that encompasses, you're essentially producing small things. And again, it's a little different because maybe it's for like, one of our growing spaces is YouTube channels. We have someone who's a solo person who's maybe got an audience, but, they don't know how to build it. They don't know how, they not understand the technology. There's only so much one can do when they're it's like self-taping. It's like you can do it for an audition, but it's harder when, your production scales. And so anything like we see on social video, anything in live streaming, any of the channels, any of the YouTube channels, any of the YouTube personalities, they're typically very small teams of maybe one or two people. They're always looking for an editor because it's maybe not a skill set they have. Production is going on everywhere right now. It's just the small screen, not the big screen.
Right.
And so that's where we see in massive numbers. That's where we see the most number of opportunities for people in our community.
Right. Thank you. And then this one is really for Victoria. Victoria, what search parameters would you recommend for finding more creative leaning positions through your company?
Assuming that they mean how can they search for more creative leaning positions on our website, or just with recruiters in general? Okay, got it. So, well, on our website, all of our jobs are categorized by industry and by the division that works on them. So anything with the creative group is going to be a creative role. However, it might not be a creative industry. So what's kind of important to know is that if you're doing job searching on the Robert Half website, if you are if you have a different skill set that maybe isn't a creative skill set, but you've done it in a creative industry, that might not be the creative group. For example, we have administrative positions in entertainment, but that would actually be our office team division. So I don't exactly see the website from the candidate's point of view all that often. So in terms of searching those actual jobs, you can go directly to the website. Most of our job postings do get posted to Indeed or Career Builder, as well as LinkedIn. Those sites, specifically Indeed and LinkedIn, are really good about utilizing keyword searches. So if you put in the role that you're looking for and entertainment, you'll come up with all sorts of jobs that relate to those searches, not just through Robert Half, but odds are Robert Half is going to have a few on there. I hope that kind of answers the question a little bit.
Yeah, just to do a little search, on the whole of what's going on. Once again, if you need support in that, the Career Center is available to you to be able to help you figure out these things. And we have a very strong relationship with both Brad and Victoria. We send a lot of our clients their way. We're just in a different place. We have come to that space now where we have to complete what we've done here. First of all, I want to thank both of you. I know there's a lot going on for both of you, even during these very challenging times, and learning how to work a little bit differently. So thank you, Brad and Victoria, for leading such an informative conversation for us today. And finally, and if we didn't get a chance to answer your question, please don't feel forlorn. It's something you can bring back to us at the Career Center. We're happy to give you any kind of support we can in figuring out the next steps. and also to help you be part of this community, you know, in a very strong way in trying to figure out how do we go, where do we go next, and how do we get there? And let us help you navigate that process, because it's not an easy thing to do on your own. And I would like to thank all of you who joined us from the entertainment performing arts community around the country. We appreciate all you do to contribute to our country's cultural vibrancy, and promise to continue our work towards ensuring each of you are supported, valued, and economically secure. And we know these are very, very tough times for everyone, but please join with us to help you help yourself and figure things out. And somebody did say, if anybody wanted to contact either of you, is there a way for them to do that? Just go on your website and just say they were at this particular event.
For us, yeah, I mean, the easiest way is go onto the website, and also, not that I'm giving a plug, but we do have a free educational resources section in our COVID-19 section that lists a lot of the free resources that are available for if you want to learn something. You know, there's General Assembly is also a good one. I think someone mentioned in there. And the Social Media Club, which is a national organization. Each region has a chapter. It's a Facebook group. It's great. But for us to go to the website, entertainmentcareers.net, just click on the support tab and say, hey, I saw your jerk boss talking this morning and I've got a question for him, and they'll forward it on to me.
Thank you so much, Brad. And how about you, Victoria?
Yeah, so for me, and it's not really a plug, I guess, because it doesn't really do us any benefit, but I saw some questions regarding the AB5 as well as unemployment information. We actually have a lot of that information up on our site as well, kind of what California, it is specific to California, so Robert Half and TCG as a whole can be found nationwide, but on our website, on the LA one, it is specific to California, but I would assume other websites are updated to include other states and cities. You can find unemployment information, COVID-19 market updates, free resources, stuff like that. In terms of contacting me directly, I do have an email that I can use for accepting resumes if you have a creative background and a creative skill set and would like to be considered for jobs moving forward. So I can either give that to you, Joanne, or to Ross, to kind of share with anyone who might be interested in creative jobs. And that would be a good way to contact me.
Terrific. Once again, thank you both for leading such a really interesting conversation about this. And this is just the beginning, because we're still at the early stages of all of this. Enjoy your day, and thank you, community, for participating in this experience. We look forward to seeing you at our next Wednesday forum.